So let's get back to VS Code. Now here we will be writing a function, and that function will be number rows. So let me create that function, and we will be passing the query same as the above function. Inside that we need result variable, and let's assign that to MySQL I_query, and let's pass the connection using this keyword and the query. After that we need row count variable, and let's assign that to the MySQL I_number_rows, and let's pass the result. So we are fetching the number of rows, and let's return that. So our number rows function is ready. Now we need another function, and that will be execute insert. This function will be using for inserting data into database. So let's create result variable. Let's assign that to the MySQL_query. Let's pass the connection using this keyword and the query. Now we have to fetch the ID, so let me create insert_ID variable, and let's pass the MySQL I_insert ID, and here we will be passing the connection, so it will get the ID. Now we need to return that, so let me create the return, and let's pass the insert ID variable. So we are done for the execute function. Now we need another function, and that will be clean data, so we can clean the data. So let's create data, and let's assign that to MySQL_real_escape_string function, and let's pass the connection, and let's create another function that will be strap_tag. Inside that we will be passing data. Now we have to return data variable. We have a clean data, and we are done for this function. The next thing what we have to do is to go to the index, and here when we click on the insert button, it should submit the cell data. So for that we have to add the JavaScript CDN. I have already copied, so let me paste here. You can see we are using jQuery 1.10. Now let's create another tag, and that will be script, and let's create the script file. Let me create that in the directory. So in the custom.js file we will be writing our Ajax. So let's do that. Document.ready. So when the document is ready, call this function. Inside the ready function we will be writing the remaining function. So let's create that. Let's get the button ID here, and that is button save action. Now when we click on this button, it will call the function. So let me check this function if it is working or not. Let's write working, save it, and let's get back to browser. Let me open the inspect, and let's go to console. So when we click insert, it will generate that function, so that means it is working. Now let's get back. Let me comment that out, and now we have to write our actual code. So we are getting the TD, and that is table data, which have the attribute content editable, and that is true. Now after that we will be writing each loop, so we can loop through all the table data. Because we don't have only one table data, we have 4 cells, you can see. Now let's get back. Now create if statement to check if there is no data available already. If the text is not empty, execute this code. Now here we will be checking for parameter variable, and we will be assigning that to end string. Now after that, let's create params and let's assign that to this and data ID. So we are getting the table ID from there, and let's concatenate that. Let's create a string, and after that this dot text. So we are getting the text, we are getting the ID, and assign that to params variable. Now after that, let's create ifs to check if params is not empty. So if it is not empty, we will be writing AJAX code here. So the URL will be function.php and the type will be post. The data will be params, and if that is success, call this function. Inside that we will be getting response, and let's pass the response to the AJAX response, and we will be appending the HTML which we will be getting from the PHP code. And let's make this TD content editable, and that will be true. To make this empty, when we submit the data, it will append that data to the below table and remove all the text from the above table. So now let's test this out. Let's go to the network, let's add some data, and when we click insert, it's not so we didn't define the params variable, so let's declare that above here, params, and that will be empty. Now let's test this again. Let's add some data. Let me clear this, and when we insert, you can see we are generating the request and we are sending the payload as well. So now the next thing what we have to do, we have to create this file. So let's get back, let's create function.php. Inside this file we will be writing our PHP code. Let me create PHP opening tag, and let's connect the file db file. Now after that, we need to create instance and assign that to db handle variable. Now create if statement is set underscore post and product name. So if the product name is set, echo working. Let me make this string. Now let's test this out. If we send, you can see the request has been sent and it is sending us working. So that's mean our file is working. Now let's create product ID and assign it to empty string, same as for the product name, and the remaining fields. This one will be code, description, and price. Alright, now we have to check if the product ID is not empty. So let's create empty function and let's pass the global variable post and the ID. Inside that we will be writing product ID and assign that to the DB handle and clean data. This is the function we have created in DB controller file for cleaning this data. We have to do same for the other fields, so let me just fast forward this section. Alright, so we have cleaned our data. Now we have to send query, so that will be SQL insert into table name, and that is table product. And now we have to write column names, so let me just copy this and paste for the others. Now we have to change the names, and this one will be product. Oh, let me fix this. This one will be product price. Alright, now the next thing, we need to send values, and inside values we will be sending the variable which we have cleaned in the above section, product name. And let me copy this and do the same as the above. Now we need to change the variable name. This one will be description and the last one will be product price. Let me add semicolon here. So our query has been done. Now we have to send this into the query function, and let me add here a variable. It will be product ID, and let's assign that to DB handle and fetch the execute insertion function and send the SQL query. Alright, so we are sending the SQL and it will assign to the product ID. Now we need to check if the ID is not empty. So when we insert the row, it will return us ID, and with that ID we will be fetching data from database. So let me create a query for that, and that will be select all from table name where ID is equal to the one which one we get from the above query. Now let me send this query. So let's create a product result, and using DB object read data, and let's send the SQL query. So we are sending the query, and let me fix this. Here we are sending the SQL query to the read function, and it will also return data. The next thing, we have to fetch that data from the row. So let me close this tag and let me open new PHP tag. Now let me just copy the above if statement so we can check if the product result is not empty. So let me remove this and let's copy the product result. Let's close this tag and let's open another one. Alright, inside here we will be writing our HTML. So let's go to the index file, and I will copy the table row and paste here. Let's remove the k variable, and here we will be using 0 index. So we are done. Now let's check this out in a browser. So let me refresh and let me add some data here. Let's click insert, and you can see the data has been shown. and if we refresh the page it is still there. Now the next thing, we have to add the delete functionality. So let's do that, and after that we will be adding the edit functionality. Let's add the ID to delete button. So I'm gonna create a data ID attribute, and here we will be passing the ID. So let me copy this and paste here, and let's change the ID. Now let's check this out if we get the ID or not. So let me inspect and let's check for the ID. Alright, I think we are not seeing the ID, so we have to check that. Oh, I think we have to add the ID in the index file. So let me go to the index file, and we will be writing the same code here in the data ID attribute, and here we will be using k variable. Now let's save this and check this again. Now you can see we are getting the ID, and if we check for the first one, it is also available. Now we have to send the product ID to the AJAX class, but before going to the AJAX code, let me just add the ID here, and that will be table. Save it and let's go to the custom.js. Now here we will be getting that table. So I'm gonna create AJAX code and add the ID here, table. We select the table, and when we click on delete class, call this function. So here let's add the console log and to check if it is working or not. Let's refresh, and you can see it is working perfect. Now let me remove this, and here we will be writing our AJAX code. And here we will be writing our AJAX code. So let's do that. Let's create variable element and pass this element. Now we need another variable for the ID, and let's pass the ID attribute. So we are getting the row ID. Now we need another variable, and that will be confirm alert, to confirm if the user want to delete this row or not. Are you sure? Alright, the next thing, we need if statement, and let's check for confirm alert. If that is true, then execute this code. Let's add the ID here so we can check if the ID is coming or not. So let's refresh, and are you sure? Yes, and you can see we are getting the ID here. Now let me just comment this, and after that we need to copy the AJAX code and let's paste here. Let's remove the data, and here we will be using object. Let's pass the delete ID with the action value delete. Let me delete this, and let me get the element, and using closest function we are getting table rows, and let's pass some CSS. So the background will be tomato. Now after that, use another EL, which is element, and let's pass the table row and fade out. So when we delete a row, it will fade out that row, and inside that we will be calling a function, this dot remove. Alright, let's save this. Let's validate the response using if statement. So let me just copy this and paste here. Now if the response is equal to 1, it will generate this code, else show alert, and if the response is not 1, it will show us delete row failed. Now let's check this out, and you can see we are getting the alert message. Let's go to the network. You can see we are sending the ID and action delete. Now we have to add the PHP code, so let me add that. ID is equal to 0. Let's if is set post global variable and action, which is equal to delete. So if the action is equal to delete, it will generate this code: ID db handle clean data, and we will be fetching the ID, row ID, and now we need to send this in if statement to check if the ID is not empty. And let me copy the SQL query here and let me paste here. Let me change this to ID so we can check if the ID is available in the database. Now we need if statement. If product result is greater than 0, then we need delete query. So let me create delete from table where ID is equal to, here we will be sending the ID which we get from the specific row. So let me send that. Let me use the variable. Alright, now after that we need db handle and execute insertion, and let me send the query and echo 1. So if the query is success, it will show us 1, and else echo 0 exit. So we are done for this function. Here we are checking for the specific row. If the row is available in the database, it will delete from that table. So let's test this out. If we click delete, okay, you can see the row has been deleted and we are getting 1. So delete function is ready. In the next we have to add insertion.